to him.
All matching?
Okay, here we go. Chantel. Blank was the lawyer that Andrew Jackson first studied law under in North Carolina. Spruce McKay. Now what I'm telling you here is if I have fill in the blank, what are you going to need to do? Know their names. This is not matching. This is fill in the blank. Spruce McKay, what's the rule? Exactly right. And I want them, we're getting in the year far enough, I want their names spelled correctly. So make sure you're paying attention.
Did it matter before?
Sometimes. Hey, Kyle, fill in this blank. In 1806, a fellow racehorse owner, blank, was killed in a duel by Andrew Jackson, which was initiated by the attorney insulting Jackson's wife, Rachel. Who was that man that Jackson killed?
Charles Dickinson.
Charles Dickinson. Very good. Okay, Gracie. Because of his toughness as a major general of the Tennessee militia, Andrew Jackson was given the nickname blank by one of his soldiers. Old Hickory. Very good. Brooke. Blank was the regular U.S. Army officer that led General Jackson's charge on the Tallapoosa River at Horseshoe Bend. Later went on to be pretty famous for things in the Mexican War. Who was the regular U.S. Army officer that led General Jackson's charge on the Tallapoosa River at Horseshoe Bend when they fought the Red Stick Indians?
Was it William?
No. Lyndon Johnson went to a high school named after him when he graduated from, he taught in a high school named after him after he earned his teaching degree. What's that?
Sam Houston.
Sam Houston. Very good, my dear. Sam Houston was the regular U.S. Army officer that led General Jackson's charge on the Tallapoosa River at Horseshoe Bend. Okay, Nick. Andrew Jackson was outraged by the results of the election of 1824 and claimed its result was a... What? Get it right. Bargain is right, but we've got to have the first part right. Corrupt bargain. Very good. Andrew Jackson was outraged by the results of the election of 1824 and claimed its result was a corrupt bargain. Hannah, during Andrew Jackson's inauguration, what stormed the White House open house, making a mess of his home? In quotations. That the rich thought was outrageous. King Mob. Very good. So, during Andrew Jackson's inauguration, King Mob stormed the White House open house, making a mess of the home. Well, the type of government Andrew Jackson initiated during his presidency, appointing men loyal to him into important positions, was known as the blank of government. To the victor belong the spoils system. Very good. The type of government Andrew Jackson initiated during his presidency, appointing men loyal to him into the important positions, was known as the spoils system of government. Okay, McKinsey. Henry Clay, who tried to balance the interests of all three major regions of the United States during the Jacksonian era, was known as the what? Great Compromise. Very good. Henry Clay, who tried to balance the interest of all three major regions of the United States during the Jacksonian era, was known as the Great Compromise. Sierra, the once powerful Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians who had adopted the white man's way of life became known as the... Very good. 5 civilized tribes. The once powerful Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians who had adopted the white man's way of life became known as the 5 civilized tribes. You notice how slow I'm going today? All right, Miss Woolery, my favorite student today. President Jackson saw the Bank of the United States as a blank and was determined to destroy it. Saw it, okay?
Something as a money power.
There you go. President Jackson saw the Bank of the United States as a money power and was determined to destroy it. Okay, Mason. Blank was elected Vice President of the United States in the election of 1836. Blank was elected Vice President of the United States in the election of 1836.
I'm gonna have to say John Simon.
Is that right?
Close.
Milo, who was it? You're going with John Tyler too, just to be safe. Mackenzie?
It's either.
Who's got it more? Richard?
Lauren. Or Richard and Johnson.
Richard M.
I know
Johnson.
his first name started with Richard.
Now, you're gonna be able to just put Johnson down there?
Yeah.
No, because how many Johnsons have we talked about so far?
It was the beaker that he said.
Yep. So, Richard M. Johnson was elected Vice President of the United States in the election of 1836. Okay, here we go, Madison. During his attempt to destroy the Bank of the United States, President Jackson deposited all federal funds into blank, all which were loyal to Jackson. Not quite. That's right, but what did he call it? Pet banks. Very good. So again, repeating that. During his attempt to destroy the Bank of the United States, President Jackson deposited all federal funds into, quote, pet banks, all which were loyal to Jackson. Nyabeth, looking kind of smart today in those glasses, I want you to know. You ready? Here we go. Blank, leader of the 20,000 Cherokee Indians who refused to adhere to the Indian Removal Act of 1830, were forced on lands west of the Mississippi in the middle of the winter, a march known in American history as the blank. Double blank for you, Nyabeth, I'll read it again. Blank, leader of 20,000 Cherokee Indians who refused to adhere to the Indian Removal Act of 1830, were forced on lands west of the Mississippi River in the middle of the winter, a march known in American history as the, what are the two blanks? Who was the leader of 20,000 Cherokees? John Ross. And what was the name of that journey they made? Trail of Tears. So I'll read that to you again. John Ross, leader of 20,000 Cherokee Indians who refused to adhere to the Indian Removal Act of 1830, were forced on lands west of the Mississippi River in the middle of the winter, a march known in American history as the Trail of Tears. Blaine?
Wait, is this?
The man elected vice president in the election of 1832 and also won the presidency in 1836 was? Shh, Blaine. Okay, Martin Van Buren. Megan, you're out of the question now. The man elected vice president in the election of 1832 and also won the presidency in 1836 was Martin Van Buren. His last name is what? Van Buren, not Buren. Okay? Keller. The Whig slogan in the election of 1840 was blank and blank blank. Tippecanoe and Tyler too. I know how to spell Tippecanoe. It's on your ID sheet. Okay, here we go. The Whig slogan in the election of 1840 was Tippecanoe and Tyler too. That would be T-O-O, not T-O or T-W-O. Gracie, you ready for one? No, who haven't I picked on? Lagarde. She's sitting there trying to, okay. Shania, the law passed by Congress in 1830 calling for the removal of Indians from the east to lands west of the Mississippi was called the?
Indian Resettlement Act.
What did you say?
Indian Resettlement Act?
Of 1830, perfect. Yep.
Where is that at? It's under President Jackson's.
You got it. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, she's right, okay. Okay. Taylor? Andrew Jackson referred to the deal between John Quincy Adams and Henry Clay as a, quote,
You repeated.
I will repeat it.
No,
No,
you did.
Dick already answered that.
We
You
did?
already have.
Yeah.
You really. Yes.
Wasn't it corrupt Oregon? No, we already did.
Yeah, I did ask it twice. So I'll ask a different one. That's it. I gotta come up with one more. Let me dig. Who served as Jackson's vice president as a now listen carefully. In the election of 1828, who served as Jackson's vice president? Will?
John C. Calhoun.
John C. Calhoun.
Let's go.
Okay, any questions? Now, here's what we gotta do. What are we doing now? Watching the rest of Jackson, because you are responsible for what?
5 things I didn't know.
We haven't started, sure we did. Yep. 20 fill in the blank answers. And 5 questions off the video.
Questions or?
Are we just starting this video or?
What's that? We already started the video. Listen carefully. We already started the video, but there won't be anything on the test that was on the first part of the video. It basically just talked about his life that I talked to you about up to the point we're at. So don't worry about it, because anything I ask is going to happen right now. Yes?
Wasn't it the election of 1824 when John C. Calhoun became president?
But say 1828 also.
So who was the president in 1824? You'll just be a contestant and we'll ask you questions and you'll dress up.
Whatever you're saying is being recorded, just so you know.
That's perfect.
Hey, the recorder is on.
Alright.
Again, there won't be any questions on the test that we have covered so far in the video up to this point.
Are we supposed to like write stuff down for this video?
I'll just listen and you'll be fine.
Really?
Everything that's gone on so far we've told you about. But pay attention, because there's some interesting facts here.
Why are you rewinding back so far?
Because this is where we ended, right here.
Jackson
Here we go.
had achieved a position in life far beyond his expectations.
As years passed, he increasingly gained the respect of the people of Tennessee. While still a judge, Jackson participated in his first election and won the part-time job as Major General of Tennessee's volunteer militia.
This may well have been the most important public office in the state, because the commander of the militia was the person charged with defending the community against external attack, which meant typically Indian attack or conceivably attack by the British or the Spanish.
In 1804, Jackson resigned his judgeship to return to his plantation, oversee general merchandise stores and whiskey distilleries he had accumulated, and pursue his real passion, breeding and racing horses. But before Jackson could be tested as a military leader against Indians or the British, his honor would be called into question by a fellow racehorse owner. In 1806, a prominent Tennessee attorney, Charles Dickinson, got into a dispute with Jackson over a bet on a horse. In the heat of the argument, Dickinson called Rachel an adulteress. Jackson challenged him to a duel.
Jackson's honor incorporated everything, including the reputation of his wife. If Jackson did not address it immediately, then his honor would be lost.
Many thought Jackson a fool, as Dickinson was known as the best shot in Tennessee. But Jackson had a daring and risky plan.
The Mason
Jackson
Irvine
decided in
plan.
this duel that he wasn't going to try to fire first because he wasn't confident enough of his aim to think that he could hit Dickinson in the heart or in the brain. So he decides ahead of time that he's simply going to stand there and let Dickinson take the first shot at him. Now, as it happened, Dickinson had missed Jackson's heart by no more than about half an inch. The bullet was lodged in Jackson's rib cage.
It's amazing, just a short distance away and Jackson would have been dead. Jackson is supposed to have put his hand to his chest to stanch the bleeding, and very slowly, very carefully, very deliberately, he took aim, fired, and killed him. Jackson, of course, had this chest wound, and he kept the bullet for the rest of his life.
After narrowly surviving his deadly duel with Charles Dickinson in 1806, Andrew Jackson spent 3 months recuperating. He began studying military strategies, hoping to one day prove his abilities as Major General of the Tennessee Militia. When the United States declared war against Britain in 1812, no one wanted to be part of the fight more than Jackson. Even though military commanders in Washington had doubts about the militia, Jackson was ordered to march his 2,000 volunteers toward the port of New Orleans in preparation for a possible British landing and assault. Jackson and his troops set out in January 1813. It took 3 months to cover the first 500 miles. But when the army arrived in Natchez, then part of the Mississippi Territory, Jackson received infuriating news.
He got an order to disband the troops. They weren't needed, and to send them home. The War Department didn't want the troops there. The War Department didn't want to pay to march them back, provision and march them back. And Jackson was outraged by all of this. How are they going to get home? They didn't have any money. Many of them were sick. So Jackson did what Jackson was pretty good at doing under similar circumstances. He simply defied the orders. And he announced that he was going to march the troops home himself.
A father figure to his troops, most of whom were not yet 20 years old, Jackson paid for provisions out of his own pocket to get his boys home. Jackson himself was in ill health, brought on by the cumulative effects of dysentery, his childhood smallpox, and old gunshot wounds. Even so, the 46-year-old general gave up his horse to transport volunteers too sick to walk on their own.
He didn't have to. He could have ridden on a horse. He could have not gone at all or taken a boat back. But Jackson got up there with the rest of them and got muddy and got in brambles, all of them cutting his face and so forth. And one of these boys, these soldiers, said, "Old Jackson, he's tough as hickory." because that was the toughest wood that soldier knew. And the name stuck, Old Hickory. And it stayed with Jackson all of his life.
Jackson made it back to Nashville with his militia intact. It seemed his short-lived military career was over. But another bitter conflict, unknown to most Americans at the time, would change Jackson's fate in dramatic fashion. At the same time the British attacked America in the War of 1812, Red Stick Indians in the Southeast, so named for the color of their war clubs, ceremoniously consumed the black drink, a form of coffee charged with caffeine. Its purpose? To purify and energize warriors before battle. For the Red Sticks, that battle would in fact be all-out war. Following the lead of legendary Northern Shawnee chief Tecumseh, Red Sticks were prepared to fight to the death to control their land. Tecumseh felt strongly that American Indian survival depended on the unity of all tribes fighting white encroachment. But his views caused division within tribes.
What Tecumseh was preaching was frankly nothing less than a race war. This was going to be Indians against whites. Not all the Creeks buy into this. Other Creeks decide that Tecumseh is dreaming, that the Indians will never be able to reclaim their territory. They'll never be able to drive the whites out. And so one of the first results of Tecumseh's efforts is to split the Creek Nation with the Red Sticks going on the offensive and the other Creeks deciding they don't want to have anything to do with it.
Many Creeks had already adopted the white man's ways.
Some of them actually, if you saw them on the streets, you wouldn't think they were Creek Indians back at that time. You would think they were just plantation owners.
Since Europeans first came to America, many whites